So what I'd like us to talk about today, if it's all right with you, is a little bit more about how can we help each other joyfully age, okay? And I think if there's one thing we're all doing right now, it's what? Aging. And why not celebrate it? I love that sign I always see when I'm speaking somewhere. It says, until further notice, celebrate everything. And that's not bad. And until maybe you have some friends like I do who don't celebrate life too much. I mean, they're so caught up in their problems, their pains, their pressures, and they have pity parties. You ever have pity parties? You know, you sit around feeling sorry for yourself, and I try that, but nobody shows up, you know, and I'm just sitting there. And so, but I have to tell you too, when I think of this, my mind goes back when I used to serve in St. Louis before they asked me to leave, you know. When I left, one gift we got from our former friend John, that's all I'll say about John, but John gave me a mug, and the mug said, "Life is hard, and then you die." And I thought, John, thanks so much for that. I mean, that really perks me up, you know, when I'm having coffee, and life is hard, and then you die. Now, you know, I'm making fun of that in a way, but I think you may know people like that too. It's kind of like, you know, I had a grandma like that. How many of you had grandmas? I had a grandma that, when I think of her, her name was Schultz, so I mean that'll give you a clue a little bit. German. She was a grump. I mean, she just really nice person, but she was always old. I mean, when you think of your grandparents, I don't know about you, but mine were always old. I mean, I bet they were 40 years old, and they looked old. They smelled old. They were old. Yeah. Well, yeah. Maybe that was the age, but. And she lived with us, which wasn't much fun for her or for us, you know. And I still remember, I don't know why I'm telling you all this, but I'm glad this is not taped anyway, you know. But she would complain. I remember coming home from school and, "Hi, Grandma," and she said, "What's so good about it?" And "It's too cold in here, too warm in here," or "Get me this," or "Get me," or "Be quiet," or whatever. Just drives us nuts, you know. And we weren't very nice to her either, I'd have to say. But one time I just lost it. I remember, and she said something like, "Richie," she'd call me Richie. I didn't like that. You know, she said, "Richie, you know why? I'm just tired of living. Why doesn't the Lord take me to heaven?" And I kind of lost it, and I shouldn't have said this to the grandson, but I looked at Grandma and said, "You know, the way you are, I don't think he wants you up there." And then, so I was out of her will, you know, and so, but anyway, hi, come on in, good to see you. Nice outfit, I like that. Yeah. Do you have a friend who's freezing right now? Yeah.
I'm freezing.
It is cold in here, huh? Yeah, but, so anyway, the theme is, again, celebrating God's gift of aging, and I'm not trying to convince you. That doesn't help me. I don't need people to try to convince me to do something, but the bottom line is what, I'll say it now so that I don't forget it by the time it's 3 o'clock, and that is, what we're talking about here is not something that we gotta do, but it's something that we get to do. You see, I don't want to lay guilt on anybody of saying, you know, lighten up, you know. When I hear the word lighten up, that's not a command, that's an affirmation. Three topics we'd like to talk about. I'd like to talk about a little bit too. I don't know about you, but first thing I'd like to suggest is, and God said, lighten up. Now you might be saying, well, where does he say that? Well, do you have any hints in the scripture? Do you hear God ever saying lighten up a little bit in the scripture?
And then there was light.
Well, that's good. Hey, that's good. I like that. Yeah, right in Genesis, right away, and God created light, right? And that was a gift. Well, that's a hint. Lighten up. Well, then you look in the New Testament too, and Jesus walks around and he says stuff like, "I am the light of the world." I mean, golly, if he says that, and if he lives in us, golly, then we become light to other people. That's why, again, I'm not trying to convince you of this, but we can lighten up because we take God very seriously. And if we take God very seriously and what he's done to us and for us and with us in Jesus' death and resurrection, that allows us to lighten up. So it's not a matter, I don't want you to kind of feel guilty about lighten up. I spoke somewhere, I preached someplace a long time ago. Usually when I speak at a church, I never get invited back. I can understand that. But it was a stewardship weekend, and I made the comment of saying, you know, scriptures talk about the Lord loves a cheerful giver. But then I also mentioned, you know, guess what? He also likes us grouchy people. You know, and they didn't like that because that doesn't bring the money in, maybe, you know. But so the point is, yeah, that we don't cheer up so that the Lord loves us. We know the Lord loves us so much that we can cheer up. And so we're not talking about everybody being humorous or knowing how to tell jokes. We're talking about the joy that is a gift that God has given to us. Now, I'm sensing you already know that, but if you're like I am, I forget that. I mean, maybe I remember it here, but sometimes in terms of how I react with people, I forget that. So I think workshops like this help me and hopefully help you to talk about, well, we need to celebrate and help other people see why we're celebrating.